Felix, I was going to wear my Miami Dolphins hat today, but they, pulled a Dolphins, what assumes to be what they're going to do all year, which is just not be good enough. And then they couldn't be the Chargers, so I had to wear.
Just good enough to annoy the crap out of you. Where
yes,
it's like, all right, where they'll lose a game by 2 points where they could have and should have won. And it's just like Mike McDaniel, if you were a real football coach, we'd be having a different conversation. But they're there for a reason.
We'll get to the NFL in a second, and we can talk about the weird conference that Tua had about player-only meetings. But look, we had it was an exciting weekend in college football. We don't necessarily lean on college football in this show, but when there is a bunch of stuff to talk about, we are going to talk about it. Here's the thing that we have to decide. We're halfway through the season pretty much. Everybody has about 6 games in, some 7.
Mm-hmm.
Penn State is dead, and we're going to talk about this here in a second. Literally dead. So you have no Aller. They're no real threat to Ohio State, and that's what we're going to talk about with Franklin fired. Can anybody beat Ohio State in the Big Ten, at least during the regular season? Because I have a sneaky suspicion I know who we're going to see in the championship game.
And we can always say Michigan because they beat them last year, even though Michigan was having a down year and Ohio State goes on to win the national championship. I think this is a better Ohio State team in general, but at the same time, you never know just because it's that game, and we'll see what happens there. But Ohio State to come back as the reigning national champions and then just be like, oh yeah, we're a little bit better where we needed to be. Our quarterback is a bit more efficient. Jeremiah Smith is back for another year. Cardinell Tate is a first-round pick as well. So, I like, if I'm an Ohio State fan, I'm really happy where we're at, obviously. But then moving forward, who's going to beat us? A basketball school, maybe.
Yeah. So let's talk about this really quick. So let's hit on the Penn State deal. Like I said, Aller gets hurt. They decide to move on. I don't think that, and look, this could just be recency bias, but I was trying to rack my brain for the last 24 hours on just an absolute total collapse.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're sitting here and you're like, yeah, but this is a knee-jerk reaction by Penn State to basically going 0-3 in a year where everybody pegged them essentially as national champions, right? I think we talked about it at the beginning of this offseason.
They're the best coordinator duo in the country. They everything was pointing in their direction. Drew Aller is one of the top 3 or 5 quarterbacks in the country. At least him and Arch Manning were the guys that everybody's looking at, and Nussmeier, and it all just kind of fell apart quickly.
Well, we talked about it after the Oregon game. So really, they come out after halftime at the Oregon game, and they just have never been the same. I think Oregon, we found that out this week against Indiana, who we'll talk about here in a second. They're just not there, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not as good as they were last year. There's some missing pieces there. Here's the problem with Penn State is that the pain isn't over yet. So maybe you give, I don't know who they made the interim, but let's say it is a Knowles, right? Okay, so maybe you get a little bit of a firing coach boost. You have to go to Iowa. You may not score a point in Iowa. They're going to be licking their chops. Then you go at Ohio State, which was supposed to be a red letter game. You now could be potentially 3-4. You're 0-4 in basically the last month. You got to do that. And then guess what? You're not done there. You may be back at home, but you got to play Indiana. So this is not the best situation. If I'm Penn State, we're packing it in this year. I don't know what else to do. But when you 4-21 against top 10 opponents, and you're supposed to be a top 5 program in the country, it's inexcusable, and that's why Franklin was asked to leave.
I don't know if he was asked to leave. I think
we're trying to make it sound nice.
They changed the locks on him. They did a lot, and it kind of the offseason question is does Oklahoma State or Arkansas? These are the 2 teams, the 2 big name schools that have already moved on from their coaches. At least if you're Arkansas, you're an SEC school, and all your games are big games, so you probably don't want to hire a guy whose big thing is that he can't win big games. you'll see. I mean, maybe he fits at Oklahoma State. I don't know. I think James Franklin is a good enough coach to get another crack at it. I mean, it's not like I don't think it's completely over with. So we'll see what happens with that in the offseason. But going back to Ohio State, seeing what Matt Patricia is doing with this defense, seeing what Jim Knowles was able to do with the defense a year ago, and then rejuvenating and just kind of changing everything once again and NFLizing it, if you will, and obviously having the guys that Ohio State does have, it makes Matt Patricia's job a bit. I mean, honestly, the defense that he has with Ohio State might be better than the defense he had with the Lions towards the end. But it's really interesting to see what he's doing as it is.
Yeah, I think Saban talked about it on game day, just some of the stuff that he's doing, that he's brought, the big three things that Patricia is doing that maybe wasn't necessarily happening under Knowles was he's running half field zones, which is in the Saban vernacular. These are called Big 12. So you're going to send a 5-man pressure to the pressure side. You're going to play man. Away from that, you're going to play zone. He's also running in the NFL. You get a lot of these mixed zones. So even if we're going to run cover 3, one side is going to be matched. The other side is going to be zone. This has been around forever. Rex Ryan, Jim Leonard actually was doing this a lot at Wisconsin when he was a DC there. So this is nothing new, but it's kind of new-ish for Ohio State. And because Patricia's doing it, everybody's talking about it. Mm-hmm. The other thing, too, is that he's blitzing the motion. So a couple years ago, I started keeping track. I was asking some of my analytics guys, like, hey, is there a way that I can get how many times that we get motion, but then we also are getting blitzes off of that. And that rate has actually gone up. So one thing that he's doing is two things really with blitzing the motion man. So you have a slot defender. Typically the slot guy is going to motion. You're traveling with him, and then you're either keeping that blitz on, or you're going to then blitz away from where he came, or you're going to blitz to it. So you're essentially, you're going to play zone, but you're doing these what's called a man indicator. So you're making it look like man. We either keep the blitz on, or we're going to leave him there. You go ahead and motion, and then we're just going to blitz you off of the motion guy, because a lot of the modern offense, everything goes to where the motion is. It's not a lot hitting away from it unless it's a run. So, in fact, I'm actually better to blitz away from the motion man because I'm now blitzing right into the run concept.
Exactly. And I mean, typically off of the run concept, that man's probably going to might be your free man on the run concept. So he might be able to make the weak side play. So that's very interesting. We spoke a bit about it. Cignetti, legit. Like Cignetti in Indiana, they're real. Like, I mean, I call it a basketball school, but it is for real. Like, I mean, we saw it on a diet version of it with Lance Leipold. When you get a guy that comes to, it can rejuvenate a culture. Unfortunately, it's not working out with Bill Belichick at North Carolina, but a guy that can come to a quote unquote basketball school and kind of rejuvenate and change this entire thing. And Curt Cignetti is a winner. Like, he just wins straight up and down. The reason James Madison is a thing is because Curt Cignetti. I mean, there is the joke of Google me. No, Google this dude.
No, for real.
He is here.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up, because I literally, if you didn't say it, I was going to. If you have never heard of Curt Cignetti, please go Google him. Look at his Wikipedia page. The guy essentially was with Nick Saban at the end of the aughts, right? So I think 2009, he leaves and takes a D2 job. He wanted to be a head coach, but he didn't want to wait in line because he knew that look, if you're going to be on the offensive side of the ball with Saban, you're going to have to wait a long time. And think about all the great offensive coordinators he's had really in the last 10, 15 years off of that. So he wanted to be head coach. He ends up taking a small-time job. I think it was like Indiana University, Pennsylvania, or something like it. One of those weird directional D2 schools. But he ends up being really good, goes to Elon. Then he gets the job at James Madison. That's where I started noticing him. Him and Brian Hayes, you know me, I'm a defensive guy. They have been on my radar. In fact, if you follow Match Quarters, then you probably have seen me write about the past couple of years about James Madison. And the reason why is because they play such a good style of defense. They just don't put themselves in situations where they're going to get beat. And then on the other side, Cignetti with the offense, look, they found their quarterback. That Fernando Mendoza, if he's new to you, he's not new to recruiters, and he's not new to scouts. When he was at Cal, he was really, really good, and it looks like he might be on the rise to maybe this number one pick. This is not a Dylan Gabriel or one of these, like even like a Quinn Ewers, who is kind of like 6'2", kind of 190 slight. Maybe he's 6 foot. Maybe he's 5'9". He can run. No. This isn't like a Pavea Pavla from Vanderbilt. This kid's 6'5", 225. He is a prototypical quarterback. So I think what we're seeing here is just the explosion of this. James Madison has been a top G5 defense under Cignetti. Brian Haynes has just carried that over. They're able to recruit. And I think you called him a basketball school, but when was the last time Indiana's been good at basketball? I think he's really flipped that culture. And Indiana's legit now. They're fun to watch too.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was going to say that, like, they're kind of a football school now, because, I mean, I haven't heard that much about Indiana basketball, but that's neither here nor there. All right, let's get down to your neck of the woods, Red River rivalry, or shootout if you're old school. Texas dominates on defense and kicks the crap out of OU. And I mean, we've been talking about this since the offseason. Sark's offense really only works if he can run the ball, which is generally true for most offenses, but his in particular. Yeah,
and I mean, this is the story of the game. Oklahoma couldn't run the ball. They had to put the hands of their injured quarterback. He'd been out for like almost 3 weeks at this point. Probably came back a week early, even though he had hand surgery. Probably comes back a week early. That's going to always be the thing. But let's be honest, man. Was the kid behind him going to be any better? I don't think that they felt like they could win this game without Mateer. So to me, OU, the story here is just OU couldn't stop the run game, which I think was interesting, because one of the things that we've talked about, Sark's run game was kind of lacking. It shows up in the Texas game. Is this a trend, or is this one of those, like we mentioned earlier, like Michigan randomly beating Ohio State? It's like, okay, these rivalry games sometimes get weird. OU's defense just couldn't pick up where the offense just couldn't put it down. Yeah, you had 200 yards passing. I think you had less than 100 yards rushing, 3 interceptions. You're just not coming back. They really confused him. If you go look at Kwiatkowski, who is primarily a cover 3, mixes in some cover 2 stuff. He kind of confused Mateer all day. Mateer threw just some bad balls, ended up being picks.
Yeah. A few more college notes. Alabama keeps it rolling. They beat Mizzou. Georgia, believe it or not, they look fantastic because Kirby Smart put together a great team, guys. Texas Tech is atop the Big 12. Got Joey Maggie and Lance Leipold got into it a little bit after the game. And USC out there on the West Coast, and they're staying alive out there at 5-1.
Yeah, now the argument is, if you're not from Texas, you might not know, but Tech throws tortillas on the field.
Yes.
And there is a Big 12 rule that says that you cannot throw objects on the field. Leopold knows this. I think this is sour grapes.
Yeah.
Which that's what Joey McGuire was saying. Like, I know he addressed it in the press conference, but also, Leopold wanted to keep arguing with him. He's like, well, what the hell do you want me to do? Like, I can't control 18 to 21-year-olds who
I've got a football team I can barely hold my arms around. What am I supposed to do with a stadium of people, dude? What, like, I mean,
yes, they're going to have to get it together, but I think it's one of those things where they're going to take the fine. This is just it's only brought up because the last note here on the Tech issue, BYU is still undefeated, and they will play them. They will play November 8th, and then they have to still play at Iowa State, and then they play Tech. So I'm really interested to see how that plays out. That could end up being a really, really big game later on in the year.
All right, let's get to the big boys and the real big boys on Thursday night. And it is just wild. Going back to last Sunday, the Eagles go into the Broncos game undefeated. They have another weird game. They can't hold it together for one reason or another. They lose to the Broncos 5 days later. They get blown out by the New York Giants, of all teams. And if you would have told me they would have got blown out by a divisional opponent, I'm like, oh, yeah, the Cowboys had a great offensive day, where it's just like Dak was rolling and they got a few turnovers on defense, or Jaden Daniels was rolling and their defense got something figured out. Not the Giants, and especially with Jackson Dart as early as things are going. Him and Scatterby are completely reckless, but they're doing some things in New York. I don't think they're going to be like a playoff team this year, and it might be more of a next year conversation. But at the same time, the Giants look good, and they at least look interesting. But the Eagles, obviously at 4-2, and with all the talent that they have, what's going on with the reigning Super Bowl champions? Because that's crazy that we have to ask that week in and week out. And now it's like really asking the question of what's wrong because they've lost back-to-back games.
Defensively, I think it's just injuries. And I think that the pass rush that they had last year, they kind of doubled down on the guys that they have. Well, Nolan Smith he's injured too. You're missing some guys in the back end, especially at corner. You're playing a rookie at safety in a very coverage check intensive system. So to me, I think a lot of that on defense anyway has to do with the compounding factor of we don't have a pass rush. And then we're also hurt in the secondary. I think offensively, look, we've seen this play out with the Eagles before. They kind of play somebody in-house. It looks like Sirianni's back to calling the plays. It doesn't look very good. There's not a lot of creativity. It looks like a high school offense. And then they start losing to teams that they can't bully. I also think too, look, that offensive line's getting old, man. At some of these pieces, you're just seeing some of these things of like mistakes that are being made that you didn't necessarily think. So I just think it's one of those where they ran into kind of this youthful team that was ripe for
a home game on a Thursday night. They were just ready to go. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, look, I like Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart's good.
Yeah.
They need to quit running him as much.
He needs to stop too.
Just stop hanging out with Scadaboo.
You guys sit. You got like in the classroom. You're a teacher.
Yes.
You have to sit on opposite sides of the room. We watch film. Cam over here, Jackson over there. Leave it alone.
Yes, we know Scadaboo's in the back of the classroom, not paying any damn attention. Jackson Dart, you're the smart kid that's hanging out with the wrong crowd. I'm putting you in the front row, right by the teacher's desk.
Good God. Oh my goodness. But I mean, good for the Giants that they have like some of these pieces moving forward. But the NFC East is kind of interesting. I know you're wearing your Carolina hat. We'll probably get into this a little bit later, but they beat Dallas on Sunday. But they still have an offense where it's like they can win or lose.
They can win or lose every week, yes.
And it's a version of the same thing with Washington, but I think they can be a more stable version of it. Obviously, the Giants, they have the new life that we're talking about, and their front seven on top of that, what we just got done talking about, is phenomenal. So the NFC East, as much as everybody talks about it because of the teams that are in it, it's worthy of talking about because it's kind of interesting in Philadelphia, even though they're still leading it at 4-2. It's going to get a little interesting if they can't figure it out sooner rather than later. Yeah, it's quietly getting interesting because if the Giants can start being good, if it really just was at the end of the day, Russell Wilson just couldn't do anything on offense. And now you inject Jackson Dart, who's willing to take a little bit more chances, is more athletic, is just a better quarterback at this point. Well, then you also have I think they found a star in Scadaboo. Look, he may only last 4 or 5 years in this league just because of the way that he runs. But, dude, he's a running back. Ride it until his second contract and then don't give him a second contract. But I also want to say defensively, this is a team that is not very good in the back end. They need help in the back end, especially at corner. Flott, for whatever reason, he's kind of been like a Keyshawn Nixon with the Packers. He's actually played really, really well. They've kind of piecemealed together corners opposite of him. They're really good at nickel. I like both of their safeties. So when I'm talking like they're not great in the back end, it's really the outside corner position just scares me because you can have bad days. Go look at the Dallas Cowboys. But the trio of Burns, Thibodeau, and Carter, I think they've figured out with Thibodeau is that we're going to pair you with Burns or Carter, and we're going to either move you inside or outside, and you kind of be the wrecker. And then we're going to let the other guy kind of be the looper and the speed guy and just go run it down. I think Shane Nelson, I've always liked him as or Bowen, I've always liked him as a defensive coordinator. He was really good under Vrabel when he was with Tennessee. So I think now he's figured out what he can. That linebacking core is good, not great, but they've got guys there that can do their job. And at linebacker, that's all you need. So this is a very, very interesting division. Yeah. All right. We can talk about your team over across the pond. 9 sacks against the Jets. And I thought it was just kind of funny that Aaron Glenn's like, what do you mean? Yeah, Justin Fields our starter. No, he's not. No, he is not, Aaron. Good God. And like I know the Broncos defense is good and all, and like I mean, but 9 sacks is crazy, and negative 10 passing yards to bring it all together. But like, and even particularly Vance Joseph, every time I see him, I'm like, you were the head coach of the Broncos at one point. Now you're their DC. Like I know it's just every week I see him coaching is just like, what type of man do you have to be very humble to go into the same offices? I know everything's changed since then, but at the same time, just an interesting move. And his defense is one of, if not the absolute best in the league. And at least it's what the Broncos are hanging on to, because Bo Nix is kind of up and down, and like you never know where he's going to put the ball sometimes.
Well, I've mentioned this before. He comes from the Wade Phillips tree. Wade Phillips has always been a pressure heavy, just in terms of being able to create a pass rush. If you go back, I mean, all the way. Yes. In fact, I just got done reading his book, Son of Bum. It was really good. But you forget, he has kind of always been a guy that can create sacks. It's just, for whatever reason, it just kind of wanes after a couple of years. And he just kind of, I think too, when he was a head coach, he was such a very much a player's coach in eras where that was not okay. We don't want you being friends with the players. We don't want you respecting the players. These are we're pawns on a chessboard. You do not like, so I think that he would fit. I think if he was born now, or if he was coordinating now, the thing that you mentioned in terms of the pass rush, Denver is going to go down in the past couple years, last year and this year, if everybody stays healthy, as one of the best pass rushing defenses of all time. They had over 60 sacks last year. They're on pace again to do this again this year. Like you said, 9 sacks. And if you really watch him, all that he's doing, he's using these mug fronts. And I wrote about this on Match Quarters. He's literally just packing the line. And what he's forcing is these tackles that aren't very good now have to play in space. And that's where he's getting all these sacks. Mm-hmm. It's not even like Zach Allen's going to have 10 sacks like last year. Look, it's Cooper and Benito, and nobody can block them when they're just getting going. And Benito, what an absolute terror. If I was a tackle, I mean, poor Mims against the Bengals. You had the big tackles with the Jets. I mean, there's a couple of times where the guy tries a quick by the time he quick sets, by the time he's on his second kick step, I mean, you've played offensive line. By the time he quick step, Benito's already sacked the quarterback. So it's just, and look, like you said, Fields has played okay, but when you play a defense that plays a lot of man coverage and pressures heavy, it just goes to show you what Fields really is. And the Jets, the whole sequence of the last 2 minutes, because that's kind of the big thing, the last 2 minutes of the first half, everybody was like, what the hell are the Jets doing? The Jets wanted to play defense. That's what they wanted to play. They wanted to run the ball, play defense, and force Sean Payton into a corner, which he never panicked. Bo Nix never panicked. They didn't make any mistakes. So I thought it was a really good game. Hey, look, short week. You play on Monday. You got to fly to England, play a game. I thought it was good. I'll take a W in the NFL anytime.
Mm-hmm. Not scoregami, by the way, if you're familiar with the concept. Scoregami in 13-11. It wasn't a unique score in NFL history, believe it or not. Moving forward to Drake May and the New England Patriots getting the dub over the New Orleans Saints. And we've been saying this it was my hope going into the season. And last week when they beat the Bills on a field goal, I was like, all right, they're here now. Now, I think quietly, obviously, because it's just a win over the Saints, but they have this game. They win over the Saints. They have the Titans and Browns in the next couple of weeks. This is like, all right, Patriots, you guys are not just like a decent team. You guys are a solid team that should be in the playoffs, and potentially, depending on how these next couple of weeks go for Buffalo, because that defense still isn't very good in Buffalo. We haven't seen them play this. We're recording this on Monday. But they're keeping that. If they can keep this momentum up, and if Drake May is that guy, he had three first half touchdowns, and Stephon Diggs obviously being the older receiver. If everybody can stay healthy and things keep moving forward, Patriots are a legit AFC threat. I'd put them on the same caliber as like the Chargers right now or something like that, maybe more consistent than the Chargers right now. And that's saying a lot because it's the Chargers.
No, I think you're right. I think the defense is going to have to get a little bit better. They just don't have weapons on offense. So I think like their ceiling is really low, but the floor is really high, meaning that they're the high in the sense that they are going to be a playoff team. I think they're going to be a playoff team. I think they're going to force the Bills to panic a little bit at some points during the year, especially like, let's say the Bills go and lay an egg against the Falcons. And then all of a sudden here we are. And it's both of them are 4-2, so I think the Bills go 2-0 against the Patriots this year. I just think they're the better team. I think Josh Allen's going to be a better quarterback, but I think you're right. You mentioned it in our show notes. Like, Vrabel is a football guy's favorite coach, right? And both of us are football guys. Like, when I see Mike Vrabel, I'm like, yeah, that dude. Yes. Leader of men, right? Like, I get it. He gets in dirty. What I like about him is, like, he is one of those, like, he's a lineman. Just in general, like, he wants to work with the line. He wants to work with the tight ends. He wants to work with that. And that, to me, I think is really awesome.
To me, the best analogy, I'm going to put my Colin Cowherd hat on real quick. But to me, the best analogy is like the manager at a mechanic shop that can also change oil. Like, he can also, like, sure, he's really good at doing payroll and he's a really good manager, but also, like, if we're short on staff, he will jump in and do whatever's necessary. And, like, I mean, we've talked about him jumping in with the pads at practice all the time, but, like, it just works out. And, like, again, the culture from last year to this year completely changed, and it's not that many new players. Now they've brought in Stephon Diggs and a few things here and there. It was just about, all right, Drake's going to develop, and we need that leader of men to come in. And Josh McDaniels, believe it or not, he can still coach, even though he's not a very
good he can call an offense. I would not want him in charge of a program.
Absolutely.
He can call an offense.
So yeah, very, very good for the Patriots to get on some track there. And moving forward to the Colts, we talked about this a few weeks ago about Danny Dimes being this year's Sam Darnold. I think it's just kind of true for the Colts in general, where they're kind of the Vikings from last year, where they have a very smart coordinator, Brian Flores, Lou Anarumo on defense, but just wasn't necessarily getting his flowers yet. And Lou Anarumo has to go to Indianapolis this year. But overall, not a ton of names, but a few of them to highlight every now and then.
Yeah, Cam Bynum is the biggest one here. I think also, too, if you really look at their roster on defense, their front four is actually really good. And I think people forget that. I've mentioned Cam Bynum before on here just because it was like, oh, I know exactly what Lou Anarumo is trying to do. He's trying to get some of this reverse engineer, what Flores has kind of been doing with some of these 5-man pressures with quarters behind it. He wants to do some of these different rotations and things. But, Kwity Paye is a above average defensive end. Grover Stewart, I think, is one of the more underrated interior defensive linemen, especially as a nose. DeForest Buckner is still DeForest Buckner. Yeah. He's still an all-pro. And then Latu, one of the guys, when Latu came out of UCLA and you're watching that tape, it was the cleanest tape. He had a pass rush plan for everything. Nothing looked the same. He could bull rush you. He could speed rush you. He could give you an up and under. He could give you an in to then out. He did a bunch of different things. And so when you really look at it, this defense is good. Zaire Franklin, again, another underrated piece that wasn't highlighted a lot. And then they're back in Nick Cross. I think people, again, that's another underrated guy. Where they're not great is at corner opposite Charvarius Ward. Oh, yeah, by the way, they have Charvarius Ward. Don't forget, do you remember Charvarius Ward from the 49ers? I know we've talked about him before. So, yes, this defense really, when you break it down, great roster. And then now you're just not messing up on offense. And what do you get? You get a guy like Shane Steichen who can finally run his offense. He looks like a genius. Remember the Shane Steichen? Oh, yeah, we just talked about the Eagles and how bad their offense was. They had to go get Kellen Moore to fix it. And guess who was running it before that? Steichen. So yeah. I think, again, this kind of just shows you kind of where they are. And this is a really good thing. I think opposite this, though, I almost forgot. They have only punted 10 times. Do you know the last time a team has only punted 10 times to 6 games? 1950. 1950. That's it.
Remind the listeners that Daniel Jones is their quarterback. Yes. Daniel Jones.
Yes, Danny Dimes. Yes, the Daniel Jones that got ran out. Again, the Giants are looking at this like, oh, well, we got rid of Saquon, and he ended up being really, really good. We got rid of Danny Dimes. He ended up being really, really good. And then the last thing here, and then we can move on. But the Cardinals are now 0-4 in the last month, and they've lost all of those games by 4 or fewer. The injuries are racking up on defense. Actually, I'm gonna I'm going to whisper this, but they look better with Brissett at quarterback than they did with Kyler Murray.
Dude, I'll say it loudly, actually. They look a lot better with Jacoby Brissett than they do with Kyler Murray. It's the God's honest truth. And I think we're too afraid to say that because of Kyler Murray's the number one overall pick. This is all stuff he did before he got to the NFL. We said it before.
It's the athlete versus football player analogy.
Yes.
The athlete at quarterback is awesome, but then you go and you look like a guy like Lamar. I know we've talked about this too. Like, look, what has been the biggest transition for Lamar in the past 3-4 years? He quit trying to run the ball all the time and quit trying to be a running back at quarterback and started actually playing quarterback. We talked about it, I think, a couple of weeks ago. The pendulum's probably actually swung a little bit too much. Hey, I need you to go run the ball sometimes. Like, if it's just not there, just duck and run, and then go get a 20-yard gain. Like, let's keep it ahead. But I think with him, we've talked about this too with Kyler. He can't step up in the pocket. And if you can't step up in the pocket and you have no pocket mobility and you're just relying on just kind of those circus act. I mean, look, watch even his sacks. He's never just like sacked. It's always just normal. Like, and he's just like running. You're like, oh, he's going to make it. And then, a finger gets caught on him because he's so small. And then he just goes down.
Oh man, it's terrible for Arizona. Now moving forward to your Carolina Panthers taking down the Dallas Cowboys. Rico Dowdle has a game of his life, revenge game over his teammates. He told them to buckle up their chin straps.
They weren't buckled up. That's what he said.
And we said this earlier. Dallas can win or lose any game against anybody, and I think this just proves it. Where I don't think Carolina's as bad as their record may prove sometimes, just because of certain things. I don't think Bryce Young is the answer, speaking of all the Kyler Murray issues. But outside of that, I think Carolina's fine. And it because that defense is as bad as it is, you can lose a game like that, and it has to be 30-27.
No, it reminds me of like a Cliff Kingsbury Texas Tech team, or even a Mike Leach Texas Tech team, where
Texas Tech team.
Yeah, where hey, our offense is probably one of the best in the league. They're going to get CD Lamb back. Okay, so add another touchdown to the score. But the problem is that we're also giving possessions back, right? And so now all of a sudden,
like, you're putting your defense back out there. It doesn't matter. So it really sucks if you're Dallas, because, and again, if you have that one piece on defense, again, I know Micah Parsons probably isn't solving all of your problems, but he saves one possession for you. It's a 27-20 game.
I think
that's a regular NFL game.
Yes, you text me and you're like, I'm teaching mom about game management, right? And it's like situational football. And I think that this is a prime example. I think people are really confused with this defense, because Eberflus has traditionally been really good defensive coordinator, just in the sense of like, he can put together a defense that's not going to mess up. He's just not going to lose a game for you. There are things that are going on in Dallas that are just egregious, right? Just what are we doing here? Why are guys where they're supposed to be? The run defense is terrible. What I really think has happened is just your defensive personnel has got caught up with you. And I think Eberflus is trying to do some quote unquote stuff to kind of, coverage disguise. But here's the deal, man. Quinn knew it. We're not going to disguise. We're just going to run cover one. The only disguise we'll do is maybe do a trap two on a passing down when we think maybe we can trick them into throwing into the flat. Zimmer, he was a little bit more diverse coverage wise, but he had the lowest disguise rates in the NFL. And so I think what you have is like, what is on your roster is a lineup and play roster. And look, sometimes just being lined up is going to get you some of these stops. And I think like just quit trying to do stuff and just play defense. And then hopefully your offense can score.
Just lay the ball up. Sometimes why are you putting all this English on it? Just lay it up. We're tired of it. Moving forward to the Seattle Seahawks, they get a win over the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I have this in our notes that they keep playing a bunch of teams that are basically them, where the Bucs are basically them, but Baker's a little bit better, so they lose by 3. They play the Jags and they get away with it because, if we're being honest, Sam Darnold's a little bit better than Trevor Lawrence. And I hate saying that as a Trevor Lawrence guy. And JSN is just another example of an Ohio State receiver being that guy for a team.
Yeah, he is so fun to watch. And even when you watch that game, like you kind of like, right, the way that I watch film during the season is I just kind of roll through. I'm trying to see, okay, are certain things showing up? I really don't necessarily even pay attention to score. And so sometimes when you, because I already know what it is, right, going in. So when you're watching it, like quickly through the season, like if you watch a Seahawks game, you have to sit literally, like I have to go back and look at the score, like, wait, did they win or lose? Like I can't remember, because you just can't tell, because it looks like an even
I don't
match.
know.
Like
It's an odd game. It's a very NFL game where it's like, wait, what's going on? Oh, it's the fourth quarter. We're tied. Wait, no, they're up by 2 touchdowns. Oh,
well, he's got DeMarcus Lawrence pass rushing. McDonald and
25.
yes, McDonald is a master. I think if people need to remember what the Ravens were doing prior to McDonald, and the McDonald they went from one of the worst pass rush defenses to one of the best. Last year, that was the big concern going into this year was, hey, we have no pass rushers. Okay, well, you end up with an all-pro, right? Interior defense lineman, and then both of your edges actually are relatively above average. They're pretty good. They 10 sack guys, right? So I think, like, you look at this year, it's the same thing. They didn't add any pieces. The big concern this year now is like Reek Woolen. Like, what the hell's going on with Reek Woolen? I really think that what you're seeing is they're kind of moving away from man coverage. He's having to play a little bit more zone. And so you're just getting some things. He's made some mistakes. I think that they're going to be fine. This is, again, I think it's with what's going on with the 49ers, which we'll get to next. So to segue into that, I think Seattle has an opportunity to really take advantage of the situation.
Right. Baker Mayfield is the MVP of the league right now, and it's not much of a discussion. We're only 6 weeks through, and so like it's probably going to change and morph, and he's going to have a bad game, and the Bucs are going to lose. And again, they have a lot of these cardiac games where it's just like, wait, what? Yeah, they're winning. Okay, well, everything's fine. And again, Emeka Egbuka goes out with a hamstring injury in the game, and he's awesome, and they still put up 30 points against. And the 49ers, they lose Fred Warner throughout the game, but still, the Bucs are really, and the schedule only gets easier from here on out for them. So I'm really interested to see how long this momentum can stay up. But like, again, it is a reason why the Bucs were okay without Mike Godwin. I combined Chris Godwin and Mike Evans and JSN. At least with the Seahawks, they're okay letting DK and Lockett go because they can trust going into a game. Yeah, we're down 2 out of our 3 top receivers, but Emeka Egbuka can be that guy. But then on top of that, Baker Mayfield is that guy anyway.
Yeah, and I think, look, he got the defense where he needed it, and the key piece here, if you don't know who Jacob Parrish is, he played at K-State. He's currently the nickel for the Buccaneers. One of the problems last year was they had Tyke Smith at nickel. They didn't have a safety next to Antoine Winfield. Then you go and you look at Zion McCollum and Jamel Dean were playing good. McCollum, I really like. I think he's really, really good. Jamel Dean is kind of that decent guy. But if you don't have like a nickel, you either are forced to play base way too often, or you're kind of trying to like mitigate a lot of these issues, especially with some safety help. Well, when you play a lot of zone and your safety's not very good, your corners look bad. And so what I think that he's been able to fix there is that getting Hassan Reddick and just adding to it. Yaya Diaby is, again, another above average edge. He's not going to do anything crazy for you. I still think that they have problems with Servassier Dennis. He's just not great in coverage, but Levante David's able to kind of clean up some of that stuff. So again, we have an above average defense with a really good offense that tends to win you a lot of games in the regular season. What's going to have to happen is that defense is going to have to evolve into a top 10 defense. If they can do that, then we can sit here and have a conversation about, hey, maybe this is a team that could be really, really dangerous in the playoffs.
Yeah. I like how you have this written here, but I don't want to spend that much time on it. Pittsburgh is the best team in the NFL. Aaron Rodgers.
It's just laughable.
Aaron Rodgers, he's just an old guy with no zip on his ball anymore, and so he can't throw into zone anymore. But in typical Pittsburgh way, Mike Tomlin's going to find a way to win, which awesome. They might win their division based off of that because of the hole that Baltimore's in, the hole that Cincinnati's in, and Cleveland. Mazel tov. So it is kind of interesting there. But Sunday Night Football, We had to get here.
Yes.
Kansas City Chiefs put up 30 again, which I know they lose to the Jags last week, but they put up 28. They put up 35 if you count the touchdown that he threw to Devin Lloyd. But they had 37 against the Ravens. This Chiefs offense is back, and then you factor in how again situationally good this defense can be, and then you can get a game like that. I'm not saying that the Chiefs are blowout artists again, but they just blew out the best team, who people thought was the best team in the league on Sunday Night Football for everybody to see.
Well, my wife asked me last night because we were watching the game. She goes, I thought the Chiefs weren't very good this year. And I said, here's the deal. The offense has figured it out. They're going to get Rashee Rice back. It's going to be fine. So the offense probably is going to get a little bit of a boost from Rice. I don't think it's just going to be a tremendous boost. But again, I think it's going to be – look, they've kind of figured that part out. The offensive line is playing really well.
Help Josh Simmons, the tackle who was out on like the day of, and Jalen Moore gets the start. He has a kid that morning and gets the start on that day. So congratulations, Jalen Moore.
So my point to her was this. The Lions met a defense that really situationally matched up well with them. Spags wants to play a 4-3. He wants to play base. He doesn't want to play nickel. We talked about this at the beginning of the year. The biggest problem I see with this defense is the nickel position. Yeah. And they don't have a corner opposite of McDuffie. So they want to play 4-3. Well, what do the Lions allow you to do? They allow you to play a 4-3
on the field.
Right. And
leave Leo Chenal on the field, who's been having a very, very good season.
Well, and that's the thing. I would sit here and argue the Chiefs probably have the best trio of linebackers in the country. And so
they can't cover a tight end to save their life, but I'll get.
Well, that's again, I think that's more or less a safety position. And look, Bolton will just drop randomly to a zone, and you're supposed to go the other way and give up a play. But that's like maybe like 10% of the plays. And typically they're not going to count. They don't have a pass rush, but you're playing a Lions team that does not want to drop back pass. They're kind of built in the same kind of Shanahan style, even like a McDaniel style where, hey, we do not have a drop back passing game. Everything feeds off the run. Well, the Chiefs hang their hat on stopping the run, that they've always done it. So I think to me, it was more of a buzzsaw. Where the Chiefs are going to have problems is again, you're playing the Jaguars. The Jaguars are kind of a Sean McVay, 11 personnel, kind of but we get in tight, but we really run spread stuff. And so it kind of puts your guys in a bind. Sometimes you have to play nickel. So I think going down, I think they match up really well with the Broncos. I think that they might struggle a bit with the Chargers if the Chargers can ever figure it out. But the injuries, I think, are going to be a problem for the Chargers. So I still think the Chiefs will end up winning the West. I think the Broncos end up second, and I think the Chargers barely miss out on the playoffs because I think the Patriots take their spot.
And that's exactly why it's getting a little too close. It's wild that we're already talking about the playoffs and it's week 6, but the Chargers, they started the season 3-0. It's all right, they're going to win the West. Well, no, 2 weeks later, they almost dropped the game to the Dolphins, and we're and that would have been monumental, especially if Kansas City and they do eventually end up beating Detroit. They would have been tied at 3-3. The Broncos are sitting at the top of the division at 4-2, but now the tie is at the top of the division, 4-2. So it's just, the NFL, we're in the meat of the season now. I think that's it. That's why it's the greatest sport ever created, because everything matters every week, and there's still 11 more weeks of football to go.
Right. And the reason why I love the NFL is example 49ers. To have all the problems that they have, and they're still in the lead. Well, the whole West is 4-2. So it's here we are, we're complaining about, San Francisco doesn't have, can they survive? Well, they're 4-2. They're in the, they're tied with the Seahawks and the Rams. The Rams, we didn't even talk about them, but they handled the Ravens, so then you have Seattle, which we talk about is that, hey, they kind of look like, hey, we're playing everybody, but look, hey, they have a 49-point differential. You know what I mean? Look, all these teams are good. And that's the parity, I think, in the NFL really makes it the best league, really the best professional sports league. All right, let's end this up really quick because I know Felix, you got to get out of here. So I mentioned the Rams. The Ravens are. I'm gonna end you with 5 different notes from the rest of the games. The Ravens are 1-5 to start the worst in franchise history. This looks to me like a big reset in the offseason.
John Harbaugh, James Franklin. I mean, it's very similar situations. If you ask me.
Yes, I mean, I would probably. They are not a knee-jerk franchise, but
right.
Look, I'll say this.
But this has been a long time coming. They've had playoff defeats, and they've had it's been multiple.
I
years.
agree with you.
Don't waste Lamar's prime. If to be cringy about it, but.
Well, I think they went so hardcore into their, and we've talked about this on the pod before about that their coaching tree is all built internally. They're kind of in the same boat with the Eagles, except for it's kind of imploded on them. That they've had a bunch of injuries on defense. Offensively, they're just not producing. And then also you lose Lamar. You have a situation with the young DC. Dean Pease isn't there. So, okay, well, was it Pease running the defense last year or was it Orr? There's a lot of things, but I do agree with you. You're sitting here and it's almost like Franklin-esque of we consider the Ravens one of the best in the regular season, but then they can't ever beat anybody. After that, my boys, Carolina, got a shout out to them. They can only win at home. So please, please, please go and win. Look, I'm a big Evero fan, and then I love Cooley, who's also the passing game coordinator there. And then I work with Caleb Evans, who's a backup corner there. So I'm really connected with Carolina. Love them. Love to see it. Please go beat the winless Jets, please. Okay, so speaking of a Franklin-esque record, Miami is 1-15 versus teams with winning records in the last 16.
What? Mike McDaniel bothers me. And I want him to be successful because I don't think I like diversity amongst coaches. There's just an odd guy out there. But dude, what are we doing? It's just ridiculous.
Well, and I've said it on here before. It's a meme offense. The defense doesn't have a lot of talent on it. I like Weaver.
Weaver built some dudes.
Yeah, and I mean, I like Weaver. The Chubb deal, Broncos look like geniuses getting rid of Chubb. So you look at that roster and it's just kind of falling apart over time. You had the Tua deal that came out. It's dude, that's TMI. We don't need to know that you're having players
put a microphone in front of his face again. I would never again. He doesn't need to talk. No. I don't want him on Levitard's show. I don't want him anywhere.
No, if you're having players only meetings and they're not showing up, I mean, that says more about just the overall culture. I think
Tyreek getting hurt probably did it in for this team because he was the reason people were showing up to these players only meetings and he didn't even want to be there.
Right. Yeah. So but even then, you could argue too, what's the leadership coming from him as well? I think this was the first year that he was team captain. Mm-hmm. And there have been rumblings. Do not forget that Fangio pretty much quit because he just couldn't handle the players would not show up to meetings. They wouldn't do what they were supposed to be doing. They moved off of Javon Holland because they thought, okay, one of the deals that were coming out of Miami was that he just wasn't showing up to stuff. Okay, well, this is endemic. This is your whole organization. You've now had guys that have come in to kind of try and be hey, we're going to get that back. Look, everything starts at the top. And I've said, look, I've been coaching for a long time. The head coach, how you act, everybody underneath of you, it all trickles down and it aligns with you. So that to me is it. Let's last 2 and then we'll get out of here. Raiders put the pressure on Ward. I don't know if this is a crazy stat too. They did have 6 sacks, but did you know Ward only has 2 passing touchdowns on this year? There is no talent on that roster for him to even throw to.
Poor guy.
Yeah, poor guy. And then Packers handled the Bengals. I thought, look, the reason why this game was close is because Flacco's not going to make a mistake. And you have enough talent on offense.
Not this week. He's not going to make a mistake this week.
Right. It was a short week. He couldn't make a mistake. But it's just throw to the good guys. They've got plenty of them over there. So, again, thanks for joining us again on another Let's Talk Ball. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. Make sure to follow both Felix and I on socials. It's been fun having you. Again, this is the one show that's going to talk ball. We're not going to talk about Dak's legacy.
Yeah, Danny Heifetz.